So hello and thank you for joining us today. So we are recording this interview on behalf of Interreg Europe project SPOTLOG. And I'm today very pleased to be speaking with Aleksandrs Kotlars, the researcher from Riga Technical University. And today we will explore some trends, challenges and opportunities shaping the future of urban freight and last mile delivery. So to start, could you briefly tell us about the research you have been involved within currently, and what are the key insights you have gained regarding the sustainable logistics and urban freight systems?
Thank you for having this opportunity to present and to discuss a little bit the results of the research, which is still ongoing. There are still some topics to be clarified and to be finished this year. So it's the fundamental and applied research project named Transforeka by Latvian Council of Science. And in scope of this research, actually, there are multiple objectives and tasks defined. So probably I could mention the main ones. We are actually elaborating two functional models that would support and that supports industries, the stakeholders, in transition from the traditional to alternative or to green transportation solution. So the first is the dynamic model for logistics service providers on the transition from traditional transportation using, for example, diesel, to the alternative modes of transport like electrical vehicles in the last mile. And the second functional model actually is the supportive model for the decision making on building cooperation between businesses, so customers and logistics service providers, basically that supports better collaboration in implementation of these alternative logistics services. And what is important, in order to support these models, we have collected a lot of data. The industry data. Basically, we have analyzed the market in the entire Europe to understand what is the current situation with the vehicles. So the diesel vehicles, the electrical vehicles, hydrogen and other fuels as well, in order to build the models, in order to build the forecasts. And also in collaboration with the global logistics service provider, also operating locally in the Baltic states, we have made the analysis of, let's say, commercial documents of the various manufacturers from the European Union to understand what are the patterns and what are the expectations from the major market players in terms of transition to alternative transport services. This, of course, gives us the opportunity to see what is going on in the market, and recently we have participated in the several international conferences. Like this year in April, we have presented our results in USA in the conference organized by the University of South California. Last year we have organized a session in scope of the international scientific conference held here in Latvia, where we also discussed our results. And of course, we also actively involve students in our research, so master students, bachelor students. And as the outcome of this research, I have also managed to successfully defend my PhD diploma, which is associated with the topic of this research. And actually, this type of the projects we are discussing right now has another very valuable impact or let's say the condition. It's not only about the researchers or let's say the benefits for the companies, the logistics service providers or the manufacturers. It has the significant benefit for the economy, for the country, for Latvia and the Baltic states in general. We have the opportunity by participating in the international conferences or organizing the international conferences to promote the image of Latvia and the Baltic states in general as an important and significant transportation and logistics hub in Europe. So the impact and the things that we are doing here are visible far away from our country, from our region.
And in your view, what are the key challenges cities and regions face when trying to implement inclusive, low-emission urban logistics systems, and especially in low-density areas?
Well, actually, there are several gaps that has to be addressed and solved somehow nowadays. First of all, it's infrastructure-related and investment-related gap. This is particularly visible in low density, for example, rural areas where we see there is insufficient capacities of charging stations, of fueling stations in order to use these alternative transportation, let's say, more efficiently. The second thing is, of course, the economical aspect or the fiscal balance. It has to be understood that if municipalities or the government promotes companies or private persons to move from the traditional transport to the alternative transport like electrical vehicles, it will have the impact on the income from the taxes, right? Therefore, there should be some mechanisms that would help municipalities and the government to balance, to recover or somehow compensate, let's say, these ungained incomes, yeah, from the transition to the alternative solutions. Of course, we should also mention the, let's say, some sort of lack of awareness, because this approach should be really collaborative. There should be interest from all the stakeholders, all the parties involved, not only the logistics companies, but also the companies, customers, government, and also the people. Normally, when we are talking about the last mile, we may imagine, let's say, that the goods that are delivered to the retails, to the markets, etc. When we visit the market, we don't really understand how those goods are delivered. And this actually creates this unknown gap, or let's say something that is not really visible to the end consumer. And it has to be somehow promoted in order to raise the awareness. And also an interesting fact that we have discovered from our market research, which was conducted in collaboration with the global logistics service provider, is that in fact many companies in Europe and also globally, they're actually interested in searching and using alternative transport services. So let's say transportation, not only using the diesel, but for example the biodiesel like HVOs or hydrogen or electrical vehicles. But there are other aspects that somehow put the barrier, and one of the aspects is of course the economic factor. So these alternative solutions has to be attractive also from the economic perspective. And here we come to the economy of scale. It somehow summarizes all the burdens, all the aspects. So the infrastructure, the density of the fuel stations, and other aspects.
And what role does data and digitalization play in creating more efficient and greener logistics systems?
Indeed, the data is crucial in our sector, in logistics, in supply chain, in the transportation. First of all, it's a data-based decision-making process. So heuristic approach, of course, is good, it's fine, especially when we are talking about the people who has an extensive experience in the field, so the expert view. On the other hand, in order to make the precise forecasts, in order to have justified decision, the data-based decision-making is important. Therefore, this data has to be collected from the different activities, transportation, storage, procurement, and other things. And as a result of that, based on, let's say, these collected data, companies conduct predictive or prescriptive analytics. And this is important, especially in the supply chain, like to see how to plan the supply of goods, how to organize procurement, and how to organize sourcing activities. In terms of the sustainability, if we are talking about the efficiency of the green solutions or alternative transport solutions, of course it is important to understand how to measure the real effect. And in order to measure for example, the CO2 savings or the benefits, it has to be based on some sort of the data. Therefore, this information has to be collected, processed, accumulated. So here is also the importance of the data. And probably last but not least, I would say it's maybe even one of the most important things nowadays, is that we are actually now talking about the transition from the knowledge or the, let's say, this information era to the intelligence era, like it was approximately, I don't know, 40 to 50 years ago in 1980s, the transition from the labor market or resource market to the knowledge, to the information era. Nowadays we see that it's not enough having the data. It's important to act, to use the data properly. And now we're talking about the different AI-based agents, tools, basically how to put it into the practice. And I think that this is one of the trends that is now being actively developed, and in the future it will affect really significantly the area of logistics and supply chain in general.
And looking ahead, which logistic trends do you think will have the biggest impact on regional freight mobility over the next 5 to 10 years? And especially in terms of sustainability, integration and territorial equity.
Well, first thing, as I just mentioned in the previous section, is indeed the proper usage of data and the creating and utilizing AI-based platforms and tools in order to manage the entire supply chain, to coordinate all the stakeholders, basically all the partners that are involved in the supply chain, shippers, transport companies, brokers, and other parties. What else is really important, and it somehow probably contradicts the digitalization and automatization, is the importance of the partnership. The relationships, even the personal relationships between the parties are crucial in order to build efficient supply chains. So it's not only on the shoulders of the logistics, for example, providers to implement green services, alternative transport. It's actually the responsibility of all the parties, the customer on the one hand and the logistics provider on the other hand, because the logistics provider itself cannot achieve or fulfill without having the, for example, data or information that comes from the customer. So the partnership is actually, the topic of the partnership is important and will be important in the future. Another thing is, of course, the, let's say, this approach from global to region, or let's say from global to local. There will be, in my opinion, a quite important role of the regional hubs and logistics services, or logistics centers in particular. So, and this helps actually to solve many operational issues, like achieving better loading factors in the transportations. For example, coming back to the topic of the efficiency of the green services, we can imagine the situation like we have to deliver a small parcel to the rural area, so the remote location, and we are considering, let's say, electrical vehicle, or let's say the hydrogen fuel cell truck. If we have to travel far distance with just one parcel and use the entire vehicle, of course it's not efficient because the loading factor is low, and in the end we will receive the result that it actually generates even more CO2 alternative emission than we would do this with the regular diesel vehicle. Therefore, having these regional or even local hubs will support development of these alternative solutions. And the last thing probably to mention is that the environment is becoming complex, and the demand for logistics services is also becoming more complex. In the future, it's actually nowadays and in the nearest future, the logistics solutions has to adapt or correspond to the needs of the industry. The good example would be the automotive industry. That we see nowadays, the patterns, the behavior of consumer is absolutely or totally different from what it was, for example, before the COVID pandemic, right? The people somehow are choosing not to buy, but to lease, to use, to rent the vehicles, and therefore it also requires changes of the transportation of the supply chain organization. In the finished vehicle logistics, there is the, let's say, the service which is called car as the customer, which means that the logistics companies, they treat the individual vehicle as the customer, and they adapt all the deliveries, all the services to the specific vehicle that could afterwards serve the needs of physical people like we are. So this vehicle is properly served, the service is prepared on time, it's fueled, it is positioned on a certain location. So this is the complex solution that is being required, and the companies will adapt to it.
And just one more question, where do you see the researchers' role in improving the last mile delivery or logistics as itself?
I think it can be associated with the topic or with the point that I've probably mentioned. It is related to the partnership and the collaboration. So actually the research, the university is also part of the supply chain. It's not only the shipper, the consignee, the transport company, it's also the institute as we are, who provide the knowledge, who help to develop those AI-based agents and tools, who collect the data, who present the data. Therefore, I believe the research in university is and will become a significant part of the supply chain in the nearest future.
Thank you, Aleksandrs, for sharing your insights. It's been very valuable to speak to you.
Thank you very much.